Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size. For 52 years, they wanted to bring abortion back to the states. They wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And that's Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and everybody. Liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back in the states. They said at first they were going to go out to another vote. They were going to go through a primary system, a quick primary system, which it would have to be. And then it all disappeared, and they just picked a person that was the first out. She was the first loser, okay? So we call her the first loser. She was the first loser when, during the primary system, during the Democrat primary system, she was the first one to quit, and she quit. She had no votes, no support.
All right. Well, that was Donald Trump yesterday at a, I hesitate to say press conference, but let's call it that because he was there, the press was there, and the press asked questions. So I guess technically that makes it a press conference. What it really was a train wreck. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But just want to let you know we've got Chris Matthews back with us today. Chris is back in the back room. We're going to chat with him in just a little bit. And also, stick around for another thrilling episode with America's newest beloved icon and Jen's dad, Just Jeff. So that'll come after our chat with Chris Matthews. So, all right, let's break apart this insanity that Trump delivered yesterday. First of all, I just want to say he is right on one thing. I've never met a Democrat, a liberal, that didn't want Roe overturned. So he's right on that. How crazy is that? and nothing from the press. Nothing like, excuse me, Democrats wanted Roe overturned?
I just wanted to add the infanticide. I mean, that's what me and my girls talk about all the time. Yay, Dems.
Yeah.
Let's go infanticide.
Well, he said, he goes, so the baby's born, and then there's a discussion with the mother, and they decide whether or not to kill the baby. Play this out. Like, let's close our eyes and visualize. Okay, so a woman's there in the stirrups. The baby pops out. Wah, wah, wah. They clean up the baby. They wipe the baby. They take it over to a table after somebody cuts the umbilical cord. And then there's like a group think happening. It's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, we got to talk to the mother. It's up to her.
Well, that's what he's talking about with choice.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. I'll be here all weekend.
Well done. So Donald Trump is pro-choice. It's up to you whether or not, after the baby's born, whether you kill it or not.
You got me.
And nobody in that press conference yesterday, not one reporter was like, sir, because we know he loves to be called sir. Sir, that would be called murder, and that does not happen in this country.
Such a good point. I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's crazy annoying.
He says nothing that will appeal to anyone but the brainwashed cultists.
It was vintage Trump over and over again. I did think it was funny that he said he felt bad for Biden because he was pushed out, apparently. He had a lot of sympathy for Biden, apparently.
But that's his new thing. It's like, the Democrats' coup and how he was winning. I was beating Biden. And then they brought in Harris. This is how politics works. The Democrats, the DNC gets to pick and choose and support whoever it wants. And Joe Biden has the ability to say no or yes, I'll leave. And that's it. It's none of Trump's business. And he's been arguing it like he spent all this time and money fighting Joe Biden. And now I got to fight somebody else. It's like, okay, so then do it. Shut up and do it.
There was so much ridiculousness in this. I'm not going to even dignify it by calling it a press conference because obviously it wasn't a press conference. Mm-hmm. In fact, he mic'd it in such a way that you could only hear him speak and you couldn't really hear the questions.
Right.
And
which was funny because you'd hear and then you'd hear him go, that was a stupid question. And you're like, what was the question? What was it? I want to know.
What was the question where the answer was the reason why he didn't lock up Hillary Clinton was because he was generous?
The question was, is Kamala Harris smarter than Hillary? Because Hillary was smart. And, I used to protect her. I used to defend her. Like, they'd say, lock her up. And I'd be like, nah, get away with that. There's literally like 1,000 clips of him going, she should be in prison. Lock her up.
Yep.
He also doubled down on the fact that Kamala really has to choose. She can't be Indian and black. That's not possible.
It is the stupidest thing. Like, it's called multiracial.
He actually said it was disrespectful to both.
Right?
He doesn't care. I mean, he just finds it disrespectful.
So I don't know. It was just 90 minutes of absolute insanity. He looked like shit. He was pale. He was sweating. I mean, he made Richard Nixon in 1960 look like Brad Pitt. I mean, that's how bad it was. And when and if they ever debate, that physical contrast on a stage with this young, attractive, vibrant-looking woman is going to be so stark. And I think he knows it, and he's terrified of that.
And
he's terrified of her.
And all she has to do is say, all these people in the crowd are here to see me.
Yeah, but you see, you're raising a really interesting point. In the clip we played, he went on and on about the crowd size. And first of all, he's ridiculously pathologically obsessed with Martin Luther King. And no, he did not get a bigger crowd than Martin Luther King. And no, he didn't get 106,000. Here's the thing. What happens is when Trump goes to like a college football game and walks into the stadium and waves, that becomes a Trump rally and therefore 106,000. He never got 100. He never got, I don't know if he's ever gotten 20,000 people at a rally or 15,000. In the meantime, she is now getting 10, 12, 15,000 people, and it's unbelievable. The energy is unbelievable. Kind of hard to see Harris slipping off her game. They got it down, and it is working. And the polls are showing it. She's gaining in key states. She's gaining nationally. She's ahead by 4 points on the latest Marquette poll. And if you put Bobby Kennedy in there, she's ahead by 8 points. And we saw from yesterday, that's going to be Trump for the next 3 months. And if I say to you, are we going to see even worse from Trump in the next 3 months? Most people would say yes. So it's kind of hard for me to sit back, even as a skeptic who prefers caution to euphoria. If things continue the way they are, I'm smelling a landslide.
I'm not sure about that, but I think we can win. The thing about Trump is that he's fundamentally really lazy. I mean, he hasn't campaigned for a week, and then he comes out of his bedroom to give this thing called a press conference. And all I can imagine that he's in bed in his boxers eating buckets of fried chicken.
I don't know. There's something different in the air. He seems like he is gone. And she has put energy into a campaign that we have not seen since 2008.
Well, let's say the words that everybody else is saying. Joy.
Joy.
She's putting joy back into the Democrats that they haven't seen for years. And, she's giving people permission to be hopeful. And we haven't had that opportunity since Barack Obama.
Yeah, and I think the prosecutor thing is a huge asset. You see how she's not just handling him on the campaign trail, but how she handles hecklers?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah. The polling is great. Huge gain in Democratic enthusiasm, like 20 points huge. She is up 52-48 in the Marquette poll. In Wisconsin, she's doing well in the head-to-head. Wisconsin always votes the same as Pennsylvania and Michigan. Those three states usually vote in tandem. You win one, you win them all. And Cook political poll, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, back to toss-up from leaning Republican.
It's great.
It is all about get out the vote. We don't need Trump voters. Honestly, I don't even care about the quote-unquote independents because I personally don't believe they exist. I can't believe that someone in the middle of August is going, I mean, if he actually did shoot someone, that would probably push me to Harris.
Well, they always find the independents in a diner in the middle of the country somewhere.
Yeah, I'm still weighing the options. What are you weighing? What are you weighing? He's a convicted felon. He's a rapist.
We have to go to the middle of the country, bring some microphones, and go to a diner, and then we'll find them.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. And then we can get some of that good bacon he's always talking about. What is his obsession with bacon? You can't get bacon. I bought a package of bacon yesterday. What is he talking
He's
about?
speaking your love language.
I went into the supermarket yesterday. There's like 15 varieties of bacon.
This is his anti-vegan politician.
No, it's like when he says things like, you can't take a shower anymore. There's no water. Really? He's just such a gross... I have problems describing him because my default when I talk about people is to go, oh, he's such a gross human being. And then with him I stop because he's not human. Have you ever seen or met anyone in your life like him?
You got to be careful. Remember, Bill Maher got sued for calling him an orangutan.
Bill Maher should have gotten sued by orangutans. Okay? Because they're the ones that got slandered, not Trump.
This morning I was reading something in the New York Times where they were contrasting Tim Walz with J.D. Vance's Midwestern perspective, right? And you have this like completely optimistic guy who wanted to participate in the American dream. And part of it was because it was a different time. He was raised by parents who had a healthy relationship, didn't have any issues with drugs, very different from how JD was raised. But it was also the difference of 20 years. It makes a huge difference, right?
But
and I do think that there are two different ways that you can view the American dream. One that's dead and squashed, and one that's like still out there to reach.
Well, look, I mean, there's no doubt that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and much of the Republican Party are all about gloom and doom. America's World War III is coming. We're being invaded, blah, blah, blah. It's all darkness. It's all hate. It's all fear-mongering. And voters don't like looking backwards. And that's all he does is look backwards. Kamala Harris and, to your point, Tim Walz, have been all about the future, all about America's a great country, and we're going to make it even better. We're going to make healthcare better. We're going to make housing more affordable. We're going to give women back their bodily autonomy. These are the things that resonate with voters. But I was going to say I try to make things really simple. And it's like my party, my politicians, for the most part, are the kind of people you'd be okay with having them babysit your 12-year-old daughter. You would not have Donald Trump babysit your 12-year-old daughter, and you sure as shit wouldn't have J.D. Vance babysit your 12-year-old daughter. And if you can't go to a poll on November 5th and think that the people you are voting for to run this country, to be the leaders of the free world, but you wouldn't trust them to babysit your 12-year-old daughter, then you shouldn't vote for him. You can entrust Tim Walz with your children. You can entrust Kamala Harris with your children. And I think that's how people need to start looking at this. Anyway, let's get to our winners and losers.
My loser, Glenn Youngkin, for excusing Trump's plan of purging 140,000 civil servant jobs by stating that folks can just find other jobs in Virginia. My winner, Tim Walz. I love his Midwestern can-do. My favorite line was, "Mind your own damn business."
My favorite line was, under Trump, violent crime went up. And I'm not even talking about the crimes he committed.
That was a good
That
one.
was really
That was
good.
the best. I hope he uses that over and over and over again until we're all sick of it, which we never will be.
My loser is the media for buying into Trump's ploy to garner headlines under the guise of a news conference. He never answered a single question, and yet they gave him more than an hour, and I don't know what we've learned since 2016, but clearly the media has not learned much. My winner is, of course, Kamala and Tim, because they are an incredible team, and she made a great choice.
My winner, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democratic Party, which is currently bathed in the kind of energy, excitement, and enthusiasm and sheer joy not experienced in many, many years. My loser, Trump, J.D. Vance, and the GOP, which can't seem to get out of their own sexist, racist, pathetic, empty-suited, despicable way. All right, that gets us to our weekly rant. I want to talk for a minute about the double standard that continues to benefit Donald Trump. The latest example of this came yesterday during his press conference at Mar-a-Lago. In his 90-minute rambling, incoherent display of pathological lying and lunacy, he didn't get one shred of pushback from the press. Not one follow-up question, not one demand to substantiate any one of the bazillion lies he spewed, not one attempt to fact-check in real time. Contrast this the way President Joe Biden was treated in the weeks after the debate. The challenges over and over and over again from reporters in the room, from George Stephanopoulos, from Lester Holt, from everywhere. It feels like 2016 all over again, even after 2 impeachments, an insurrection, adjudication for rape and fraud, 4 indictments, felony conviction, and 9 years and 40,000 lies. The media is still terrified of Donald Trump, neutered, clipped of their balls like a horny hound dog. To be clear, Donald Trump is who he is. He is a deranged, dangerous, sociopathic monster. We know what to expect from him. There's no one to blame for Trump, but Trump. But we can place blame on the media for enabling him, even coddling him. Worse, granting him a platform to be 100% untethered from truth and reality with total impunity. And ultimately, it all serves to normalize his erratic, unhinged, corrupt, treasonous behavior. Because rather than call it for what it is and call him for who he is, they spend hours and hours and hours each and every day analyzing his comments as if he's a legitimate candidate expressing legitimate views. Which may explain why this monster has been in a dead heat with Biden and now Kamala Harris. And therein lies the danger. Thankfully, the energy, excitement, and enthusiasm generated by the Harris-Walz campaign appears poised to transcend this uneven playing field and ride its wave to victory as Trump continues to flail with fear, panic, and desperation. All right, it is time for Chris Matthews. He's a journalist and political commentator, columnist, author, television host, and professor. His 15 years in politics and government includes speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter, administrative assistant to House Speaker Tip O'Neill, columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, syndicated columnist and Washington bureau chief for the San Francisco Examiner, host of MSNBC's Hardball, and his books include 2011's Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, and his 2021 memoir, This Country, My Life on Politics and History. Chris, welcome back into the back room.
Thank you.
So
It's Friday morning.
Yeah, uneventful week, right? What are we going to talk about?
Amazing. Another incredible stampede of the news. The way I look at this election is if it moves fast enough, it may overturn history, because we're talking about an historic election. And the only way I think people can do something new is to do it quickly. Because if we go back to our history, we won't elect Kamala Harris. That's our history says we don't elect a woman of color. So, but I do think the zest of this campaign so far in the last couple of weeks has been so fast moving, and she's been able to keep the mic from Trump so far, and even yesterday perhaps, that that she may be able to muscle her way into winning. It's going to be a really interesting test of people saying, why not? Or why not Trump again, to why not trying her? It's just a real historic moment that may slip past history. It may just happen.
Well,
I make the reference to, the game of rock, break, scissors, of scissors cutting paper. And it seemed to me, and this is sort of out of the box, that Trump was able to beat Biden cutting paper, and then all of a sudden this rock of her campaign came from somewhere, and so smashing the scissors. It just seems like a different transaction here from one we've been living through for months now, which is the slowing down of Joe Biden and Trump's glee in taking and exploiting it. And so this is a different game. And I don't know how to say it, except it's a different game than it was a couple weeks ago.
You're raising a really interesting point with regard to campaigns in general, given the truncated nature of this particular one, now that she's in the race, having taken over from Biden. Do you think in any way that resets the table in future elections? Like, is it a really long time now to have a campaign that lasts a year and a half?
Well, that's a great question. Should we go to the British-style election? But that would require that the nominating process was done by the parties, where you did it to the smoke-filled room, if you will, the back room. And that did produce some pretty good candidates. And I guess you could say I didn't agree with it, but the George W. Bush campaign was basically a back room of governors. And that when he quickly won that nomination. But generally, we want to have this long procedure like in 2020, where Biden loses Iowa devastatingly. He lost New Hampshire just as bad. He got a weak second place with about 20% of the vote against Bernie Sanders in Nevada. But I didn't even see that in the afternoon when I was covering it. It looked to me like he had disappeared and all the moderates had disappeared. And Klobuchar and the rest of all the moderates, and it was just going to be Bernie Sanders out there. And then all of a sudden, Biden gets a weak second, and then he just kills in South Carolina. And all of a sudden, we had 3 departures from the campaign, Bloomberg and Klobuchar and Buttigieg. And all that happened overnight. Another one of these overnight things, like all of a sudden, all the other candidates quit, and Biden's left standing there. He hadn't won the debates. He had stepped aside. Remember Bernie and Elizabeth both waving their hands feverishly, and Biden just standing there. He didn't even compete. So his lack of performance in the debate this year wasn't so surprising. It was just terrible, but it wasn't so surprising. He didn't choose to debate in those early primaries of 19 and 20. So you're right. The campaigns go on so long. They're very good for Trump, because Trump was able to make fun of all his Republican rivals in 2016. He said low energy Bush and little Marco, and who threw the waters across the room, and he could really satirize his opponents, and I enjoyed it. I think a lot of people who are Democrats or moderates are basically saying this is kind of fun. This guy's Borscht Belt. This is good satire. It's fun. He's very good on his feet. He's original. And he's working with a red brick wall behind him. He's a comedian, this guy. He's very good at listening to the crowd. This year, I think he's listening to himself so far. I don't think he's really picked up on what's going on. I'm not sure he's in tune now. I see Kellyanne Conway's coming back. I mean, I don't know. She's very good at going for the kill. I mean, she's very good at that. I know her for years. She'll help him with going for the negative opportunities there. But I'm not sure Trump is attuned to it, you know? He would say things to me like, Zoolander 1 worked because the timing was right. And Zoolander 2 was wrong because the timing wasn't right. And he'd be thinking about why good-looking people, or supposedly good-looking people, would be fools. And they'd be fighting at gas stations with putting the hoses on each other with obviously volatile fuel. And they'd be that stupid enough to do that. That was funny, but it was only for a while. And then the next time they tried to do the same thing, it didn't work. It said he was very good at that for a while, Trump, that knowing the moment and seeding it out and finding, why is this working, not that? I'm not sure he still has the game.
I want to stay with this truncated campaign subject for a second, because nobody's talking about it except you and I right now, which is kind of interesting. But when you think about everything Trump has always said in terms of, you know, I was up, I was winning, and then they took it away, like how he wants to stop the counting of votes. Knowing how the Republicans have operated with voter disenfranchisement and changing the rules, and wouldn't it benefit them to be able to have a short campaign so that when they come out, because they lie, they're not tethered to the truth. So that gives the advantage in a short campaign to the liars, because there's not enough time for voters to understand and figure out what's truth and what's not.
If they want to do it.
Yeah.
If they want to do that second. Now, you're talking about a second step there where you hear someone that has some credibility. Trump says, I won California at a Detroit rally several weeks ago. I won California. Yeah. Well, he lost it by 3 or 4 million.
I'm just talking about like if he's like...
But in other words, they don't have that second step of saying, wait a minute, he lost California dramatically. Why are we talking like... He's wrong.
Right.
They don't have that second step.
Right.
They don't go... my brother's like this. He says, I love Trump, and all my friends do too. And I go, what do your friends got to do with this? It's a group thing. The MAGA people as a group tend to be instructive. They hear something from Trump, and would we be talking about the 2020 election being stolen if Trump hadn't said it was stolen? They wouldn't be thinking of it.
Right.
They can't tell you a single state they're talking about. Ask a MAGA person what states were stolen. Because they don't have the list yet.
Right.
Trump has to give them the list, and he doesn't have it.
Right.
So I think a lot of this is this weird thing where Republicans who used to be individualists, very much individualists, my dad was one, who was very proud of the fact that he made his own living and he didn't rely on anybody else, that he paid for his Social Security and he got his benefits when he retired and Medicare. But he felt like he had always contributed mentally. Now, it's like you don't, are you for free trade? What's Trump say? Are you for fiscal responsibility? What's Trump say? It's really not that second step where you reconsider what somebody just said. They're not doing it. They're MAGA people, and they have their weird masks and participation in rallies. Physically, they want to look like a rally person. I saw two people at the airport the other day with full MAGA costumes on. And they assume that the neighbors are not going to notice that, or they're not comment on it. But they wanted to look like full MAGA people. And
did you see the girl who got Trump? See the girl who got Trump tattooed on her forehead?
What is that? What's that for? Is that for him? Is this servitude? I don't understand it. Therefore, I'm a little slow and I don't know how Republicans who were so individual in their thinking and proud of that to not be that way anymore. Yeah. I think it must be years of losing to the Democrats or some grievance, some resentment. But they don't all have resentment. They're not all turned off working people that aren't making enough to get past the next paycheck. They are not all down and out people. There's a lot of attitude from wealthy people who just want to move to Florida, get the tax break, and enjoy wealth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of levels to this.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if, this is something Republicans are going to start to think about. They're looking at Kamala Harris right now, and they're jealous that she only has 3 months to do her thing, and it's working real well for her,
Look, I think it's I think they have a good case when they want election results on election night. I want to see all the ballots counted, all available count, the ballots that have come in, like the early voting. I want all that counted that day, early in the day, to get the whole thing done by election night. I think they have a point that if elections drag past election night or early the next morning, people think there's hanky-panky. They go, wait a minute, why are they slowing everything down now? Why does it take so long to count? That sounds like a third world country. So I think they have a very good case. And in any way we can do it, we can't have 10 days after a ballot or election day votes count, or that's rigmarole. I think you got to have a fast count, and as close to election night as possible, and give us before we go to bed, we know who won. I think really what Americans want that. We used to have it. Even Hillary, basically, we knew she'd lost. Nixon, basically, we knew he'd lost. Certainly all the elections that have been clear, like Adlai Stevenson in 52, and when there was clear results, but we generally are knowing which way the wind's blowing. We knew who won and around with it because they didn't count the votes in Pennsylvania until late in the day or something, or after the votes count, the polls closed. Is not good politics for the country.
Do you think that the volume of voting is the reason for that? Look at all the people that voted in the last election. Those historic numbers.
They can, I'm not going to give anybody excuses. He can do it. They're going to have to come up with a system for voting the early votes on election morning when there's nothing going on all day. You can count the votes. You don't have any other new votes to count. And give the American people some drama and clarity. That's what we really need. I am fearful of the following scenario. Suppose Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do okay in Pennsylvania. They don't win by 140,000 votes like last time. They win by something less than that. But they do win. And Trump refuses the fact that they won in a state that matters. That's really scary. I don't think it'll happen because I think the Pennsylvania legislature is honest. But you don't want to have a state where they win narrowly, they squeak it, and Trump declares victory in that. So what are we going to do in those situations where the state legislature is playing around or the Secretary of State's playing around, where there's dishonesty? That scares the heck out of me because I think this election is going to be on the nail. I think it's going to be, unless something dramatic happens I can't see what it would be. Maybe the market drops or Chicago's a disaster with the rioting or something. But I don't think there's going to be a clear-cut result. And I think our elections are going to be like this for years to come, really close ones and lots of issues. And I think Trump says if there's any issues or the votes count, it's close. And then I'm going to raise hell. I mean, he's basically, no matter what he said yesterday about he'll honor the transition, he will use any issue to cloud it up.
Well,
that's what he wants to do.
Let's stick with that for a second, because as we see so far, and there is, let's say, around 3 months left still, and as we know, anything can and probably will happen in that period. But so far, she has tremendous momentum. The polls are really starting to move in her direction. As we saw yesterday, Trump is becoming panicked, desperate, terrified, in my opinion, and continuing to seem unhinged. If those two trends continue, is it really going to be a close election, or might it be a landslide, given where we are right now?
That would be dramatic. I mean, history says it's not going to elect a woman of color would be the first, obviously. And it's anything. No, I'm not sure. I think that a lot of people, I was out in Pennsylvania and I was looking at, before that, I studied each county. And something like 50 counties or so went from 68% to about 70% between 16 and 20. And I go, oh my God, this is going to be difficult. There's a puddling effect out there in those communities where they really are voting like each other. And it's going to be hard in the city of Philadelphia, or the edge of the city, or the suburbs, to make up for that growth in the rural areas for Trump. And there is a big difference between Philadelphia, where I grew up, even at the edge of the city next to Bucks County. We went on a religious retreat my senior year of my high school, and we went to Reading, Pennsylvania, an hour or so away. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the jukeboxes in the diners, it was country western. I go, where are we? Why are we listening to cowboy music out here? Because you get a little bit away from the city, and it is, as James Carville says, Alabama. And so you got to offset that in the city. So I don't think it's going to be. The other pattern I've noticed is that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania vote consistently together.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yep.
So they put in Tim Walz there. She did. All of a sudden, she's banking on Minnesota and its neighborhood they share with Wisconsin and Michigan. So they're going with that strategy rather than going directly with Pennsylvania with Josh Shapiro. You know, it's so interesting about these things. Like, it used to be if you were Jewish and you ran in Pennsylvania, you'd be careful about it. You say Milton Schaff, for example. His name's Shapiro, but he ran as Milton Schaff from Marion, Pennsylvania. If he ran as Milton Shapiro from Philly, it would be a totally different ethnic image. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest about it. Eddie Rendell, who was incredibly popular, he talked about, he said there's 67 counties in Pennsylvania. I carried 14 and I'm Jewish. Okay. So he knew what he was up against out in the rural areas. I mean, I can laugh about it because it is our history, and it's not just anti-Semitism directly with that force, but there is a hesitance. And in these rural areas, Arlen Specter was a Republican, so that helped him. He always did pretty well until he switched parties, and I'm not sure he was all together at the end, but he always got elected in tougher elections. But I'm not sure his religion played any role. Now, along comes Shapiro, who's very clearly observant, who's religious. He's not just an ethnic group, he's religious. Mm-hmm. And he says, my faith, the other day he said it. Remember that 2 nights ago? He said, my faith drives me to do these good things. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he's proud of his faith.
What an amazingly strong, wonderfully American idea, which mm-hmm. is, okay, it's a different faith than you, or many of you, but look at what it gets me to do. It gets me to do good things. I get teary-eyed thinking about this. This is what works in America, and he knows how to talk to America, and at least in the area of Philadelphia, that area.
But you and I are of a different generation, and when you think about where we are today in this country, if you sort of just try to filter out the noise of MAGA and Trump and the racism that exists, that always existed and always will exist, we did have a black president for 2 terms. We have a black female vice president who's married to a Jewish guy. We have a gay guy who
Don't forget that, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, don't forget that, by the way. When you're giving a hard time to this woman, she is together with this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, get it in your head.
And so we also have a gay man who was very legitimately and seriously considered for vice president, who also happens to be in the current administration's cabinet. We have Josh Shapiro, to your point, a proudly religious Jew who almost became the nominee, if not for some.
In fact, it may have been a morning call. We don't even know what she decided.
So when you think about it, and you think about it not from the perspective of guys like you and me, right, but from Gen Z and millennials, this is their kind of world. And I personally, I'm starting to really feel like, look, I never thought we'd have a black president in my lifetime. And then we had Obama, and that kind of changed things for me. I was like, okay, may not be pretty, may not be a straight line up, but we're definitely getting progress in this country. But where I am today is like, I feel like she is the absolute best candidate, right time, right place, and the energizing of young people today, of blacks and Hispanics, that she's rallying, the crowds that she's getting.
Yeah, I think there's a part of it that is in her control for the next 3 months, and that's to hold her position as a prosecutor. I think you only get one reputation, and you have to hold that reputation. And as somebody once said, if you don't define yourself, the opponents will define you, and you don't want that. So if they make her a member of the squad, for example, she's gone. Because I think the combination of a woman of color, and of the left, of the passionate left, who's very upset with America, the Black Lives thing, the whole thing. If you're put in that corner, I think you will lose. If, however, I've just got a copy of Presumed Innocent by Scott Turow, because there's a wonderful statement in the first part of the book, which I'm going to use in a column. I got to tell you, because I cannot resist this column. He said, when you're the prosecutor in a criminal case, a murder case, you have to go into the courtroom and you have to point your finger at the defendant. And you have to say, you killed this person. You killed this person, face to face. Now, she has fashioned it to tell that to my face. Mm-hmm. So she's answered the question of what to do with Trump if he's looming behind you, like some sort of villain. And you have to have the street quality, which Hillary didn't have, the street aspect, which is to say, what are you doing here? Why are you hearing? And point the finger at the guy behind you. Mm-hmm. You got to turn on him, whip speed, and say, how dare you walk into my corner? And that's another one of the laws you've broken. And really point to the guy and stick it to him. You say it to my face, and I'm saying it to your face. I think she has to maintain that. I think she has to hold that all through the election right now, because if she loses the prosecutorial role, and I mean in a public, that Democratic courtroom, not some bunch of liberal jurists in New York or jury members, they all think they're all liberals in New York. They're not. Boston's certainly not liberal. But these towns are portrayed that way. And it's like they don't count because they're scratching her from the field. That's what people think. MAGA people say, oh, you're just trying to scratch him from the field so he can't compete. But she's saying, go ahead. I'm with you, and I'm pointing the finger at you in public opinion. And I want the American people to judge you. 2 juries that found you guilty of abusing women. You said you were going to do it. You said you can get away with it. We have it on Access Hollywood. I either have you in a conviction situation or on tape. You did say you want women to suffer. There must be some kind of punishment. You said that. Let's play the tape. And every time you go into a debate with that guy, make sure that what you charge him with is on tape. So that even the networks that aren't very ideological or political, they've got to CBS has got to run the tape. Yeah, you did say there needs to be some form of punishment. Show that tape. Always attack with videotape. Like, let's go to the tape. Because if you do that every time, some of the time the networks or the cable networks will actually show what you're talking about. And you will win the argument. Because then you make Trump versus the tape. And with the convictions of jurors, these are all 100%, the jurors all found them guilty. Simply put, in the hush money case, the Stormy Daniels case, they all agreed. And it was, a couple hours, 4 hours or whatever it was. I think if you bring that evidence to the American people, it'll be different than in the courtroom. I think if she can maintain the role, if I came up as a DA, I came up as Attorney General, and I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to prosecute this guy. And I still think she has to win the argument that Trump's a bad guy before she wins, because I think there are, in the suburbs of Philly, where I grew up, the Irish part of town, I guess, or Jewish and Irish, that there are people that they're ready to vote against Trump. They don't like Trump, but they might vote for him because they don't like the left. They don't like that left, and she's got to be careful of that. I think she's got to work her way into being a regular Democrat, the way Biden appeared to be before he became president, a regular Democrat. And they'll say Hubert Humphrey, Jack Kennedy. And I can take that over Trump, who's a crook. I can take that. I think people can make that judgment.
Help me understand something. The narrative is increasing from the right that she's afraid to speak to reporters. She's incapable of speaking to reporters. Why the hell doesn't she just go out immediately and speak to reporters? Why didn't she schedule a press conference for today and go, okay, here I am, ask me my questions, then shut up. Shoot that shit down. Why is that kind of
because
accusation?
The people around her, because she doesn't want to. Because first of all, the rush of enthusiasm toward her, the rush that she hopes to continue on to Chicago at least. Of course, the minute Chicago hits, let's be honest, this rush of enthusiasm for the mainstream press will cease. Then they'll all put the cameras in the street and look for the Palestinian point of view. The press will turn overnight once it hits Chicago. So she has to enjoy this rush while it's going on and not getting, because if she gets to a question and answer, then the issues become issues. Remember what Gene McCarthy said? He said, if you want to be an issues candidate, just use the word issues a lot. Just say, I'm running this campaign on the issues. I'm running on the issues. I don't think she wants to go on the issues. I mean, she can talk about abortion rights and probably effectively. Does she want to talk about the border? No. Does she want to talk about inflation? No. I mean, does she want to talk about the Fed and what they're up to? I think there's a lot of problem areas for an incumbent, and she is an incumbent.
You mentioned immigration, the border. How complicated would it be if you stick to the fact that border crossings are way down, all right, in the last...
Oh, no, they're not down enough.
Well, they are down. Trump and Republicans killed the border bill, which is the best bill they ever were going to get.
But why don't the Democrats support that bill? They do not support it. They do not support it unless the Republicans do. So if it's a good bill, if it's good for the country, this is my question. If I were advising her, I'd say, come out for that bipartisan border bill right now and say, I'll do it if they won't. I don't care if they don't do it. I'm going to call on them in the Senate.
I thought I heard her say she did. I heard her say that.
For some of the details, but not the whole thing.
All right.
You don't win by saying the Republicans wouldn't back it because nobody knows what's in the bill anyway. But they'll believe it if you do it. She's got to separate herself from Biden. She can't be running on the Biden record on the border. There is no record. I'm sorry. And by the way, the people that aren't coming in as asylum seekers, they could change their mind tomorrow morning. We haven't changed anything. I think we got a problem. Every country has the right to decide how many people come in the country every year. Now, maybe they shouldn't discriminate perhaps among Mexicans or Central Americans, but as opposed to Europeans, which I think would be nice to balance out. But they're not. Every country has the right to do that. Even a country that welcomes immigrants has to decide how many can we assimilate, how many can we get into this country for jobs that we need. And I think it's a reasonable responsibility of the government and the people. Mm-hmm. You don't let the people who are seeking asylum, supposedly, to decide whether they're coming here. You can't do that.
No, and look, this is a very complicated subject because it's not one that's been able to be fixed in how many decades. But to your point, though, isn't it then just postponing the inevitable? Like, she's going to have to get out there at some point. And wouldn't it be better just to get in front of it? Just put this narrative down. Why allow...
Who do you start with? Do you start with Fox? Do you start with MSNBC?
No, just do a carefully structured press conference.
Straight report. Oh, okay. Wide open questions.
Just get out there for 15 minutes.
First of all, should get a question from one of the deuces within the first couple minutes. There's going to be somebody from Fox asking an unanswerable question, which they will write to make sure it is unanswerable, and then they will pound in with their follow-up. I think she is afraid of that. I guess I can only offer the excuse that in the give and take of a Q&A, she's never been that good. We'll see. But you're right. I mean, first of all, this debate thing. What Trump wants, I noticed he didn't. He mentioned 3 dates, very specific yesterday.
Well, he said they agreed to them, and then it's clear that nobody but him agreed.
Never agreed. They didn't agree. But obviously, he's going to say the first debate has to be Fox on with an audience there. I mean, he just wants that audience there because MAGA only works if they're applauding, and he has to. So he's going to get a lot of applause no matter what he says. I carried California, yay! But that's insane. Why they would ever? The Nixon Kennedy debates were the most effective debates because everybody got to listen. 4 debates, long, serious moderators, tough questions, and they went on. And you had a lot of time to sit in your living room and actually listen. Why doesn't Trump want us to do that? Because he doesn't want that consideration of if it's true what he just said.
Well, let me ask you this, because as somebody who had a show for years called Hardball, which I watched and loved, I sat and watched.
I had Republicans on the show too. We took on a lot of people, and McCain and all kinds of Republicans, and that was the days when cable TV could really bring in both points of view.
Yeah, but then you watch this presser yesterday, and you see how there was zero pushback from reporters. I mean, Trump lied the entire time. Everything he said was a lie. Not one follow-up. Yet, after the debate in the ensuing 3-4 weeks, whether it was a presser, whether it was Stephanopoulos, whether it was Lester Holt, think about all the pushback. Think about Karine Jean-Pierre in the White House press room recently that she literally had to say to a reporter, like, show some respect. Think about all the questioning, the pushback that Biden has taken. How come nothing from the press yesterday? They just sit there and let him lie after lie after lie. And doesn't that contribute to why it's virtually a dead heat? Because they've normalized him?
Let's talk about how would you go about fact-checking the president? You get to ask the question. He gets to answer it. Is your follow-up then? Your follow-up is that he does slide, and you have a fact in front of you. You have to have the facts, and you have to be provably right in the moment because that moment belongs to the candidate, not to you. And you have to be able to say, "I have it for a fact. Let's show the tapes." They can't bring tape machines with them. I'm not going to defend it because I do think there should be some hooting and hollering when he's lying. Obviously, they should just all hoot together. But even after the pressers are over, how quickly do they get their fact checkers to get it on the air? While people are still watching. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure fact checking works with that crowd. I don't think that you can disabuse them of everything he says the whole night. And they'll just say, well, that's the phony press. That's the fake news. They don't like him. And they don't like him, by the way. The people that care about truth don't like him. Mm-hmm. But they don't. It doesn't seem to dislodge them from their absolute belief. And maybe if they say you're right about this, my brother says this. Yeah, of course he lost the election in 2020. Of course, November or January 6th was terrible. But then they go back to their corner, which is Trump. They do find their way back. Don't you notice when you talk to them that they find a way, they find some narrow way to get back to, yeah, but I don't like the left. And I don't like what they did with the border or something like that, or crime in Philadelphia or something. They'll come out and they'll find something. They don't like the DA in Philly, or they'll find something that says, I can't even take my wife into town because it's too dangerous in the city. And this is what they'll get to. Or the homelessness in San Francisco. They have so many retreats around Trump that he can lie like a SOB.
But they also normalize
him. They will find a way to vote for him. They will find a way to vote for him.
I saw somebody on CNN yesterday, and he wasn't like a right-winger. He was just like an analyst discussing the presser. And he said, yeah, I think Donald Trump accomplished his goals today. And I'm sitting there going, what was the goal? To sound like an unhinged...
The goal was to show that he could answer what you said. To answer your question, Andy. Why doesn't she answer questions? He was willing to answer questions. He was lying, but he was willing to answer questions. Yeah, well, let me ask you some questions. You think they'll have 3 debates?
No. I'm not sure they're going to have any.
So that's what I'm asking. Are these conditions he hasn't quite articulated yet? are these conditions deal breakers? I mean, she cannot agree to, well, she can do what she wants, but I don't think she can agree to a audience participation.
No,
think?
I think what they have to insist on is the first debate has to be not on Fox, not with an audience. And then if that works, then she agrees to go on Fox with an audience and does. But I think
ABC goes up first. So ABC will be the first. And then he says, I'll do that if you'll agree to go on Fox the second go round. And
Sure.
that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
But then he'll want the audience again.
That's fine. Trump doesn't understand that the election is not going to be won or lost by who's in the audience at a debate. So he plays to that group, and he doesn't give a shit about the 80 million other people who are out there. Which, so be it. I mean, I don't think she can run from that. But I think if she gives him the first one at Fox on his terms with an audience, she'll never see us. She'll never see us.
Okay, here's what I think is going to happen. I think the Republicans are going to run on. They screwed Josh Shapiro. If they'd let Josh Shapiro, we would have been afraid of him. He would have been dangerous. Pennsylvania, and they're going to go around and found, and not just Jewish people, all people saying, "Oh, they screwed Josh." And by the way, I'm hearing this that they didn't let him into the debate because of anti-Semitism or whatever, the Mideast conflict and what's going to happen in Chicago in the streets, and they're going to make all these cases that they screwed this guy out of what should have been his opportunity. And I can see how they get under the skin of some people, and not just Jewish voters, and they're going to be saying, yeah, I would have voted for Kamala if she'd picked Shapiro. I'm telling you, this is what they're good at. This is what their specialty is. Find a grievance, build it up into a big horror show, and run on it. This is what they do. They do not wait around for facts to come in the door. They say, we got a fact right here. They didn't pick Shapiro. How come? And they're going to find some middle of the night decision she made. I see that coming, and it might be enough to offset Biden's advantage in the last election. And again, I go back to my fear is she wins the election, but Trump doesn't allow it to take place.
Let me ask you this, because I think ultimately this is the most important question that anyone should be trying to answer or discuss. Are there still those folks in the middle, the independents, the undecideds, the ones that really count? Are there people in this country that still need to be pitched because they haven't made up their minds? What is the best way to get to those people and get those votes?
Well, let's talk about edge of the city. Like in New York, Breezewood, you got people in Brooklyn and in Queens that are very conservative. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, everybody's not monochromatic or whatever. If you look at the people and you say, well, okay, the last week's argument, if it's about abortion rights, now Pennsylvania has a pretty liberal policy. It's like 23 weeks. That's not something to probably fight over. But if you played for them a tape of Trump saying, I think there needs to be some form of punishment, and his attitude all along was to play to the hard right and to even be more pro-life than the pro-life people who never say punish the woman. Mm-hmm. And you can really play that and get that into people's heads. This guy's not out for you or your interests. I think that would affect a lot of suburban women if that is the enunciated issue right at the end of the election. I also think that the people in the suburbs who are making some money, more than people in the inner city, you'd say to them, this guy wants to give people a tax break. He wants to bring back the big 10-year tax cut, that tax cut we have on the books, and we're going to add that by not taxing Social Security. I mean, this is how you do it. You say, you mean we can get Social Security and not have it taxed at all, and it's all our money? All that money in that total gross figure for the benefits you get is pretty high. You go, I can get all that, and he's going to do that, and he can do that legally? Oh, I might vote for this guy. So you can play around with tax considerations, man or woman, even if the woman's not working outside the home, trying to figure out how you can get to that family. Yeah, there are ways to get to that family. Freedom or tax reduction, to go to their transactional point of view, which is the way Trump deals with people. Mm-hmm. Everything's a transaction. As I thought the best line from Tim Waltz the other night was, he doesn't know a thing about service. I thought, wow, that captures everything about Trump. His attitude towards soldiers, cemeteries. He doesn't understand what it means to ask not, what you can do for your country. And he doesn't understand that. That is a brazen, ridiculous argument. Why would you ask what you could do for your country? Why would you even think about it? That's his point of view. He's an awful person.
Well, soldiers are suckers and losers if you suit up and defend your country.
And he's that crude. And I think that people don't get that. They don't understand patriotism. They don't understand anything about the founding of this country or what it's done, what we did in World War II, and what we tried to do in the Cold War. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't get caring about your country. He doesn't get it. He doesn't the Peace Corps. What's the Peace Corps mean to Donald Trump? I was in the Peace Corps. What are you doing out here? I mean, he would say, what do you do? What are you getting out of this?
But are there independents left, or are we talking about people that don't exist anymore?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, Karl Rove was pretty smart. If you listen to him in a non-political point, in other words, when he's talking to people he agrees with, and he'll say there's 7%, whatever. There is a chunk of people out there that can make a big difference in either election. You said possible. If there's a landslide, they'll all go to Kamala.
What are they waiting for then? That's my question. It's like 2 impeachments, 4 indictments, convicted felon, rape. I mean, what's going to push them over the edge?
Okay, Andy, you know what it is? They say, I'm just waiting for these people to talk about the facts with me. I mean, they're never satisfied with it. I want to know about the issues. They don't want to know about the issues.
No, so what?
They're never going to hear about them. They hear enough already. They know enough already. And they're not waiting for the final. I want to see their entire agenda. No, you're not, because you never argue. So you're going to vote. And when you vote, you will have voted. And so all this stuff about issues, you gotta listen to the guy. If you listen to all, you're going to know which guy's with you. But, I think they're offsetting freedom, reproductive freedom, tax cuts. But Josh Shapiro was for vouchers. That's a popular idea when you go to the Catholic school or Jewish school. That's a pretty good deal. You get some break there. Fracking, well, that's a lot of jobs in Western Pennsylvania. That's a reasonable issue. She's apparently okay on that now. That's why I think she has to take a step to the right on the border issue. I just think she's got one clear distinction with Biden because he doesn't look like he did anything.
My last question to you, as someone who's written books about Jack Kennedy, about Robert Kennedy, what do you think about the campaign of Bobby Kennedy Jr., and even more so, what do you think it's done to the Kennedy legacy politically?
Well, it has. I remember we were driving up to Nantucket Island, and we stopped off in Hyannisport. And I had gotten a lot of help personally from Ethel Kennedy on the book I did on Bobby. And her people told us, don't ask her about her son. Don't ask her about her son. I think it's a family with Kathleen and the people in the family are really responsible. And Rory, there's reasonable people in that family that know exactly the world you and I live in. And they don't want this happening. But his numbers have crashed. Yeah. To something like 3 points.
2.
I keep thinking,
2.
Will he throw his support to Trump? But I think he's already got his support. He's taking away votes from Trump now. So he could throw his 3% to Trump. This is all possible, that he could throw his support in the last couple of weeks to Trump and claim some sort of victory. I think Hollywood screws up a lot of this. I think when you go out to Hollywood and you express a passionate point of view, that's taken as heavy. This is really serious. This person's really not necessarily. No, they're not. They're oftentimes people with the least amount of information go hard left, and they go, "Yeah, I'm very, 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 very big on that." But I think Hollywood has distorted some thinking out there. There's some smart guys like Rob Reiner, but there are other people out there don't read the New York Times, don't know what's going on, and might be induced to vote for this guy. When you drive past the house and you look and see there's a Bobby Kennedy sign out front of the house, you go, wow, who's in that house? what are they looking for in life?
Yeah. Well, look,
some of it's just old Kennedy support. I mean, they grew up believing, and I think properly so, that the Kennedys had a majestic impact on American politics, to Bobby and Teddy too. And I think I understand that completely.
Well, one thing's for sure, the remainder of this race is going to get even crazier than it is right now, and we'd love to have you back to talk about it before the election.
Good show. It's a good show.
Thanks again. Come back soon.
Thank you.
All right, it is time for another fascinating episode with Just Jeff. Jeff, what's on your mind this week?
Hello. It's been an exciting week. We now know who Kamala picked for vice president. And it would have been my third pick. I would have gone with Kelly, Shapiro, and then Walz. But I guess that's one of the reasons I'm not running for president, plus the fact that I'm 2 months older than Biden. And there are a few other reasons.
Are you feeling old? Are you feeling old this week, Jeff?
No, I'm not feeling. I mean, yes, I've been waiting for you since 12:30. I've gotten real old. No, I don't feel old. I feel fine. I feel just.
Oh, keep them digs coming, Jeff.
I feel like just Jeff.
Mm-hmm. All right. Did you watch his press conference yesterday, Trump?
Very funny. Yes, I started. I wanted to. After about 10 minutes, I could not deal with it anymore. He's just. He makes up so many lies and distortions, and he's disgusting. So I tuned out. I think I would get a recap later in the day, which I did. And I'm glad I tuned out when I did. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you, I just recently heard your interview with Philip Bump, which I thought was very good. I'm actually familiar with him. I've seen him on several programs. But the thing he was talking about was the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And I probably you are one. I don't know. I know my daughter is not, and Jen's not, and I don't know about Matty. So the thing is, I'm not a baby boomer. I was born before the baby boomers, and I wonder if you or anyone else who's there knows what that generation is called.
Yeah, it's called old.
Very funny. But the tradition, if you look it up, and I hope you guys are not doing that, because I have to look it up each time, every 5 or 10 years. I don't even remember. It's what it's called? What's called? Get this: the silent generation or traditional generation. So just Jeff is not silent, but I am kind of a traditional guy. I have these weird old.
You got the mind and the mouth of a Gen Z.
Yeah, no. I have these traditional things that maybe you should get married before you have a kid. Today that's not necessary. I understand, but I kind of like that idea.
Careful, Jeff.
Yes, but I thought the interview was very interesting, and you made this was before. Actually, it must have been taped before the pick was announced, because he wouldn't commit to picking a VP. Although when forced to, he said Shapiro, and you said wisely. Andy said, and not Shapiro. So you were right.
Thank you for pointing that out. You're now my new favorite person on the podcast named Jeff. Jeff, thanks again. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.